I remember it like yesterday when Matt came down the stairs and said so casually with a smile, I booked a one-way ticket to Santiago, Chile. I thought to myself, is this real? Can we really leave our amazing careers, friends, and family? Fast forward 10 months later, after all the hard conversations, endless checklists, and heartfelt goodbyes, we were heading to the airport with one backpack each, about to set out for a multi-year adventure around the world. Filled with excitement, we had no idea what to expect, but we knew it would be a fun ride. Join us as we share what we are learning on our journey of a lifetime. This is Passport Joy Travel Talk with Nikki and Matt Javit.
All right. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We really appreciate it. This is Matt Javit alongside Nikki Javit. And we are reflecting today on the start of our journey in Chile. We talk about Santiago, Vina del Mar, Valparaiso, Antofagasta, and one of our highlights of our journey with our travel so far, San Pedro de Atacama, which is like visiting the moon. And we get into all the details of that on how to travel Chile really well, and tips and things to think about, and hot spots that you have to see if you're going that way. Again, we're just trying to document this on this podcast on the website, passportjoy.com, to give you traveling tips and insight on maybe exotic places you never thought of going before, or just things that that's going to help you on your weekend getaway, long vacations, or if you're trying to do something like us, take some long-term travel, maybe this is a way to help you out there. We are sitting in Osaka, Japan, and we are just loving our time in Japan, and we're going to get into those details in the coming weeks. But man, it's just been a crazy, amazing 2 weeks so far, and we're really loving it. As always, if you would love to help us, subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on the instrument to use. Apple obviously helps us the best. And if you do decide to leave a review, we really appreciate it. We recently got this one. You two are such an inspiration to those of us nuts who fear deviating from the grind of daily life. Love hearing about your adventures, and the podcasts are not your typical travel podcast. Can't wait for more. Thank you so much for taking the time to leave that review, and others like that. Those help a lot, and not only helps us from getting in front of new travelers that might be looking for a podcast that they can listen to, but also just helps us to understand that people are getting positive, I guess, information from what we're doing. As always, feel free to go to the website. If you want to catch up on the journey that we've had so far, go to the Journey So Far tab. That's where we go through month by month, location by location, all the amazing places we had a chance to visit. And if you break away before I recap on the end, sign up for the newsletter at passportjoy.com. That's where we send out weekly highlights that go out every Thursday of the things that we're adventuring to within the cities and places that we're going. And then also kind of highlights and information that we can share that might help you along the way that we don't have time to share on the podcast. All right, let's get into this episode and learn more about Chile. Buenos dias, mi amigos. We are going to talk about Chile today, which is extremely special to us because that's where we started the journey. And we've got a lot of fond memories from our 5 weeks there. We're going to share a bunch of stuff here. So first, we're going to go over the basic Chile travel tips when it comes to like tipping, transportation, language, food, things like that. We're going to get into Santiago, Vina del Mar, Valparaiso, Puerto Varas, which is in the south, Antofagasta, which is in the north, and then Nikki and I is one of our favorite places on the planet, San Pedro de Atacama, which is also in the north, not so far from Antofagasta. So to kick it off, here are some tips to think about as you're making your trip or you're beginning your trip in Chile.
Yeah, so I've just come together with a couple tips for you just to help you start your trip and navigate your way through Chile that I found helpful while I was there and that I learned while I was there. So there's a thing called tipping, and their word for tip is propina. And the standard tip in Chile is 10%. And the majority of restaurants, bars, cafes, they'll add 10% to the bill. And the tip should be properly stated on your receipt somewhere. And it's usually towards the bottom of that receipt. And that's the expected. So a lot of countries we've been to, there is no tipping tipping. And it's definitely something that we've had to, get used to. But Chile is not one of those countries where there is no tipping. Like, their workers depend on that money and that income. So 10% is definitely the customary amount. If your service was good, obviously, if you don't have a waiter or waitress that is being very nice to you, I'm sure you can talk to the manager, but whatever, 10%. And then, if your waitress or waiter goes above and beyond and you think that you have exceptional service, obviously, you should consider giving more. Another thing that is kind of similar to some other countries that we've visited is that asking for the bill is something that you actually need to do. So in Chile, it's customary for Chileans to eat and drink and socialize for quite some time. So it's not uncommon to feel like you're kind of sort of being ignored, but they're not doing that. They're actually just allowing you to sit around and enjoy yourself and have fun and be with the people that you're with. So it's just proper to ask for your check when you feel that you want to go. So you just would simply say, "La cuenta, por favor." And all that means is the check, please. The waiter or waitress is not going to come up to you and just give you your bill. That's deemed as rude in their country. So you're definitely going to have to ask for that. Along with the tips, that something that I've never seen before is that it is typical to give supermarket tips. So if you're at the supermarket buying some groceries and you have a person, like a clerk person that is bagging your groceries, if you have some spare change, just throwing them or offering them 100 pesos or so for his or her service is something that is just a nice thing to do. Another thing would be taxi drivers. So it's customary just to round up the taxi fare. And if your taxi driver goes out of their way to help you with your bags or makes like an extra stop for you along the way, it's customary to then actually give them a 10% tip as well. So just something to know so you're not, a tourist in someone else's country being rude. As far as language goes, so this was like Matt said, the first place that we went to. And my Spanish skills, I would call them probably intermediate. I am not fluent by any stretch of the imagination, but I felt fairly confident when I got to Chile. And when I got there, I was very surprised by the fact that when I spoke my Spanish that I had learned throughout grade school, high school, and I took all 4 years of college, I took some sort of Spanish courses. People had a very difficult time understanding what I was asking, or just even conversational, just basic terms. Like if I was just even asking where the bathroom was or where the bill was or how much our check was, etc., they were having a very difficult time understanding me. And so just something to note about the Chileans and how they speak is that they speak very fast and they communicate with each other with a lot of slang and words and vocabulary that you may have not learned while you were in school. So it is definitely, well, it was for me, it was a struggle for me to actually communicate with people while we were there. And I would just ask them to repeat continuously back to me. And sometimes it took 2 or 3 times for me to actually understand what they were saying. And there was maybe, once every 5 or 6 words, I did not understand what they were in fact saying.
Yeah, they even take pride in the fact that they speak so fast because that we joked about it as we got to know more Chileans and had a chance to talk to them about it. And then when you go to other countries in South America, Peru, Ecuador, Argentina, they even think Chileans speak super fast and they have a hard time understanding them. And we actually, as our travels went on, I think we were in Vietnam and we heard South Americans in a restaurant talking, but they were talking so fast. We understood, I knew that they were speaking Spanish, but they were speaking so fast that we could easily identify them as Chilean. And then we went up to them and started talking to them. We let them know that we thought they were Chilean, and sure enough, they were, just because it's so distinct at how quickly, and like Nikki was saying, the slang they use, and they just kind of fly through the language. So it's very difficult, even if you do have this Spanish skills like Nikki does, to understand these folks as they speak.
Yeah, and I didn't know it then, but I do know it now. So Chile is definitely a country that if you speak very little Spanish, you will have difficulty communicating at times because they do not always provide you with like an English menu. And the people there do not always know how to speak English, not even broken English. And rightfully so. I mean, that's not their native language. So as opposed to other countries we've visited where I don't know Japanese and, there's Japanese people who know a little bit of English and we can struggle through a conversation. But in Chile, I found it very difficult to even have a conversation with people, even with my broken Spanish. And then moving along. So the next tip I'd like to go over is public transportation. And in South America in general, we used a ton of public transportation as opposed to using like commercial airlines, etc. So in Santiago, specifically, there is a metro or subway system, and you can purchase what is called a tarjeta BIP, which is a BIP card. And you just buy one card. It's a little plastic card you carry around with yourself. I actually still have mine in case I ever go back, but it was just like $2.50 US. And you can recharge it at any time at any one of the metro stations. And you can also use it for multiple passengers. So Matt and I just purchased one between both of us. And you could just take it to multiple bus stations along the way or use it for the metro, etc. It's really awesome because their public transportation is fairly inexpensive. It's reliable, super efficient. And then in addition, they have these things called microbuses, which are intercommunal buses, and they go to like more than one zone. And they have multiple colors. So you can figure out what zone you need to go, find the color of the bus that you need to go to in that zone, and catch a microbus. And then they also have buses called local buses, and those buses just specifically stay in one zone. So if you just need to travel within zone A or zone 1, whatever it's called, and they're painted a color as well. So at each metro station, you can find a sign and it states which bus will stop at what station, and they're super easy to use. But the funniest thing about these buses is that if you do not know where your final, like if the microbus or the local bus, if they're going to be actually stopping at your station, you can get on and try to ask the bus driver, like, hey, like I need to go to Playa del Sol, and that's your destination or whatever. These buses drive so fast that I'm not joking you, like people are jumping on and off. Some of them have like, I don't know what you would call it, like sort of like conductor that's hanging out of this door. The door never even closes. And it's like the bus almost never comes to a complete stop. It almost like rolls through traffic lights. If you're lucky, you get a red light and the bus completely comes to a stop. But if you need to even ask a question, you better ask it super fast. And if they're not going to your stop, you better hop off because the bus driver will just leave with you on the bus and you won't even be able to get off the bus. They just go. And that's also the great thing about it is you know that you can get to your place within like a couple minutes. So they're really great to use and they're dirt cheap. I mean, I don't even know. We spent like $1 getting to and from really, really long distances as well. Sometimes are crowded, and you have to stand, but they're really not that bad. There are long distance bus trips that you can take, which are not the local or the microbuses. They're more similar to like a Greyhound bus that you would take in the United States, but they are by far way better than a Greyhound bus. I've taken a Greyhound bus and these buses are like luxurious buses. They're, in my opinion, I think it's actually better than flying because you get much more leg room. Some of them have movies. They have Wi-Fi that you can use. You can actually lay your seat completely back. Like we've taken bus trips before that have been like 16-hour trips, and I've slept the entire time, just thrown my earbuds in and listened to music and eventually fallen asleep. But you can take your luggage and check it in underneath the bus so it's not in your way, or if you have smaller bags you can put it above you or underneath your feet. But they're amazing because you can travel long distances and they're super comfortable, and you can purchase your tickets online or in person the day of, and it's a fairly inexpensive way to really travel all around or within a country or from country to country. We've done that as well. You can actually cross borders and get off and go through border patrol this way, but it's a really neat way to also travel long distance and save some money without having to buy an airplane ticket.
Yeah, and that was our first time doing long bus trips in a foreign country. So at first we were a tad intimidated, but after we did a couple of these 12 to 14 hour trips in Chile, it wasn't that bad because at one point we went from southern Chile to Argentina. That was a long trip, and then coming up from south to up to the north or part of Chile was a long trip as well. And we left there thinking like, oh, this isn't that bad. It's pretty nice, and it was an enjoyable process.
As far as other transportation in Chile, there was Uber. And the only thing I want to mention about it is we love Uber. We use it everywhere if it's available. But the problem with it is that it wasn't really reliable. Uber in Chile is fairly new. They just recently came in 2014. And I know it seems like, wow, that's 4 years. But we had a lot of difficulty with a lot of our pickup locations, especially at the airport. We had like 2 cancellations, and we eventually had one guy that was super nice and he waited for us. But between like not knowing where to be picked up and then the difficulty of the language barrier, if you're getting picked up at the airport, I just suggest taking a bus, because for us, it was just a very frustrating event. And it really did tack on an extra hour of time for us, which we have, but some people may not have that if you're trying to make it to a show or make it to something. So I just wanted to mention that once you basically make it away from the airport, if you want to use Uber, that's more feasible to do. But when you're at the airport, I would just suggest taking a bus. Another weird thing that I wanted to note was Sundays. So Sundays in Chile are hilarious. They basically shut down. It's like their day of rest. And Matt and I would be like, okay, so today's Saturday, we have to go out. We have to make sure that we have food. We have to get anything at a grocery store, whatever we need, because things are just not open. Like businesses are closed, restaurants are closed, supermarkets are closed. It's crazy. I mean, it's nice because it gives everyone a day of rest. It's super peaceful. But if you're looking to get something to eat and it's like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, nothing is open. It's almost similar to like Italy when things are, when people go and they take their afternoon nap, when you literally cannot find anything around. The things that would be open are mostly like cafes. All you're going to really get at that point in time is like little small cakes or like pastries and some ice cream. And if you're lucky, some coffee and tea. But if you want to get anything on a Sunday, just make sure to like think ahead a day before. Okay, so I want to start talking about just some of the places that we visited while we were in Chile. The first place that we went to was Santiago, and we spent about 5 days there. And Santiago is actually the capital city of Chile, and it's amazing weather. There's tons of outdoor activities that you can do. And the particular area that we stayed in was called Barrio Bellavista. And we were in an Airbnb apartment during our entire stay. The area that we were in is awesome. It's really, I would say like a younger crowd, maybe like late 20s, early 30s. And I don't think we even knew that before we went there, but we were totally fine with it. It's full of bars and restaurants and like street food vendors. And it's really geared towards like nightlife and fun. And there's supermarkets on every corners and things like that. But if you were to ask anyone or probably read any Airbnb review, they would probably say that it's a little bit noisy, but I didn't really, I didn't recognize that. Like at our stay, it didn't bother me.
But they partied until like 5 a.m. And we were lucky because if I recall correctly, we were about 5 floors up in the apartment, so the noise by the time it got to us wasn't that loud. And we were about a block away, facing the other side from the noise. So that's important if you're looking to get a place in this area. It can be extremely noisy if you're right on it, because these people party and they party hard. And it wasn't like it was just a Friday or a Saturday, but it was almost every day of the week, because I think there's a lot of expats that go through there. And they just like to have fun, and they party late. So it was interesting to wake up in the middle of the night and say, "Oh my God, they're still going at it." It was pretty cool.
Yeah, and like I mentioned, Santiago has amazing weather, so there's just tons of outdoor things to do and sights to see. And so one of the very first things that we did is we did this like little mini hike there. So they have this one hill, and it's called Cerro San Cristobal, which is St. Christopher Hill. And it was really kind of special to us because St. Christopher is the patron saint of travel. And so the hill is about 850 meters in height. It really wasn't that of a difficult trek up. I mean, it's pretty much straightforward. There's no like rocks or anything or huge steep ledges. It's just, you just walk straight up. It's kind of like an incline. But on the very top of the hill, there's a 22-meter statue of the Virgin Mary. And there's just a great panoramic view of Santiago, the city itself. And you can actually like bicycle up or drive it up, or they have this kind of like cable car ride. But we walked the whole thing, and it's a nice little nice little walk. I mean, I remember it being like very, very hot. And so I'd just suggest maybe taking a bottle of water. But other than that, there was tons of people doing it. Another thing that we did was we grocery shopped at the Mercado Central, which is the central market. And here it's just like any other market we've ever talked about, where there's just tons of fresh fruit and vegetables, and there's lots of spices and fresh fish and seafood. And the atmosphere is super noisy and crowded. It's just a place where you can see a bunch of locals like gather, and where they actually really shop. And here, though, you want to make sure. So these vendors that sell their products, they sell them here in bulk. So it's not like other markets where you can go and just like buy a apple or buy, like one banana. And that does exist. So the prices here are normally like posted on a sign, and it's in per kilogram. So when you go to this market, if you're going to be buying food, you're going to be buying big amounts of food, and most vendors will not sell it to you if you want to purchase for less. Another thing about this market is like you have to bring your own bags. So a lot of other markets, when you go to markets, they will provide you a bag or something for you to take your stuff away in, which is nice. And I never really even thought about it. So you'd be walking around with like bags or just like bushels of things in your arms. But this market particularly, like they don't give you bags. So you might want to just bring a backpack or stuff if you buy something.
Yeah, we bring up markets often on our travel. And if you are going to foreign countries and you're not trying to find ways to go to the local markets, you're really missing out, because it's one of the most authentic ways to understand what is kind of the vibe of the city that you're in, because you're seeing what they're selling, what people are buying, the interaction between the people, how they position and sell their things, and if there's like a bartering system or if their prices are firm, like all those things that you get to experience when you walk through a market are critical. And so we bring it up often because it's one of our favorite things to do, if not our favorite thing to do as we get into new cities, as you're walking around the town, to go to the market area and just to find out what types of items they sell the most of, and then how they go about haggling and in the positioning of those items. So definitely take advantage of that whenever you travel.
Another awesome thing about Santiago was that they had a ton of street food. And obviously this was like one of my first times that I was eating street food, because prior to all of our travels, I was super like sketch about it. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't, like everything has meat in it, whatever. But there were so many signs that were like, this is vegan, this is vegetarian. And I really didn't believe it. I was like, how are they having vegan empanadas? But they really did. I went for it, and they had vegan empanadas and vegan sandwiches, and things were made of like soy and tofu, and they had like black bean burgers, and I don't even know. They even had like soy hot dogs. It was pretty crazy. But there's tons of variety of non-veg and veg like options for you to eat, and they're super cheap. It's like $1 or less for each item. Like one empanada would be an equivalent to $1, and it's really tasty. And obviously you're supporting the locals, and it's just a good way to try like a different, tons of different stuff. And Matt and I would just be walking along the street, and I'd be like, oh, look, there's a vegan empanada, and I'd get one, and then he'd try the veggie burger or something like that. And we'd just go along and sit along the side on the sidewalk and enjoy a really cheap $2 lunch. In Santiago, this was our first time that we actually partook in a couple free walking tours. And we've actually talked about these before, but these in Santiago were absolutely amazing. So the tour company that we went through was called Spicy Chile, and I found it on TripAdvisor. And the first tour that we did was called the Fruit Market Tour, and they took us to like, I don't know, 10 different places. But so we saw the outside of the Chilean Museum of Fine Art and the St. Lucia Hill. And then we went back to the Barrio Patronato, and that's in actually Recoleta, where you can find like Arabic and Korean and Indian, Vietnamese cuisine all within one area. So it's a super unique area and very famous just to have all those different ethnic foods all in one location. And then we went to the Vega Fruit Market, and I think that's why they call it the Fruit Market Tour. And then the Estación Mopacho, which is the former Mopacho train station, which serves Valparaiso, Argentina, and North Chile. And it's just a really beautiful train station where a lot of people just take a picture of the front of the building. But it's actually declared a national monument and heritage site. So it was just something cool to see. The cool thing that we did is we went to one of Santiago's oldest dive bar. It's called La Piojera, and they have these really famous drinks called the terremoto, which means earthquake, and it consists of pepino, white wine, and bitters, grenadine, and a scoop of pineapple ice cream. And I'm not sure if Matt tried one. I didn't try one. Did you try one? I think Matt tried one. But they have a smaller, weaker version of the drink, and it's called the replica, which means aftershock. And apparently, like, the bar only allows like one or like a patron to consume one of each because they're so strong. I guess it's like 45% alcohol. But I don't know. Matt tried one. I don't even think it really affected him, but it's like the thing to do is to drink this ice cream alcoholic beverage there. And then we went to the Mercado Central, and then we went to our last stop on this tour was called the Plaza de Armas, which is the main square of Santiago, where basically you can see their central post office, and they have like a cathedral, and it's just like where a lot of people go to hang out and stuff. And then the other tour that we did was more of like seeing buildings and stuff like that, but it was called the Hola Santiago 360 tour. And we saw the old Congress building and the Moneda place, which basically it takes up one entire city block, and it houses all of Chile's presidential offices. And then you could see like Santiago Stock Exchange, etc. So we visited this one neighborhood. It was called the La Asteria neighborhood, and it has like a very bohemian chic feel to it, tons of restaurants and stuff. And then we went to this other area. It's called like the Piazza Italia, and it just has like antique stores, furniture stores, art galleries, and some Italian restaurants. But it was just a really neat tour that we did, and I really liked it because with these two tours that we did just of Santiago, we got to see so much. And it was just I guess it really introduced us and started our love of walking tours. And it made us do so many more on our journey. Another great thing in Chile that I would suggest to do is drink Chilean wine. It's really good and really cheap. And Chilean wine, you can go and buy a really good bottle of Chilean wine in the supermarket for like $5, $5 US. And Matt and I, honestly, we did that maybe one time, but even in the restaurants, I mean, their wine for a huge glass. I mean, when they pour their glasses of wine, I mean, we would be laughing. Like, I remember taking pictures of me drinking glasses of wine where, like, you know how the red glass of wine is so much, it's just huge. They would like fill it to the top. And it's like, this is literally a half a bottle of wine, and you're paying like $5 for this. So it's just, and it's really, really good. And then they have what you can also enjoy. You'll see signs everywhere. They're called shop. It says SCHOP, like enjoy a shop. And after a while, we were like, what is a shop? And we finally asked someone, and essentially what a shop is our equivalent to a draft beer. So Chile has many local beers that you can try. And it's just, I know Matt enjoyed many. I don't remember which one was his favorite, but they just have tons of shop beers that you can try. They also have lagers and pale ales and stuff like that. So it's just some fun things to do while you're there.
And Santiago is definitely an international massive city in South America, and it continues to grow. It's becoming a corporation hub in South America. So it becomes, like Nikki was describing, they've got all these different ethnicities of food, and it's just a lot of different options, and it's continuing to change over and over. And as we talk to other travelers around the world, it's definitely a place where many people are trying to go and experience. And it is a great spot to, as you're looking for South American plans, to hit along your travels. So from Santiago, we transitioned to the coast with Vina del Mar. We had an Airbnb lined up there where we stayed with this wonderful woman that had a place it was about a 2-minute walk from the coast. And we knew too, because like I said, we started our trip in Santiago, our journey, this journey of ours, we started in Santiago. So we were still in vacation mode. So we definitely knew that we wanted to get some beach time and get on the coast. And that's why Vina del Mar was such an easy way to get there with the bus pass. And it was cheap too. So we wanted to spend time in Vina del Mar and also get a chance to experience Valparaiso. And Vina del Mar is just a gorgeous, I guess, beach coast. It's like a resort city. It's known for its beaches. They've got outdoor gyms, a lot of health conscious restaurants. They've got nightclubs. They got an older, like a 1930s style casino that overlooks the ocean, and ceviche, fresh ceviche everywhere, which that's one of my favorite things to eat, probably in the world. I love ceviche. It's basically seafood marinated in onion, cilantro, salt with fresh lemon and lime juice. If you never have ceviche, it's definitely the best ceviche is in South America, in our opinion. But it's something you got to try. And then the coast, we did many coast walks where we would just go out for the day and walk about 2 to 3 hours up one side and walk back, because there's these cool little towns along the coast that as you pass one, there's always another one on the horizon. And we just kept walking and taking in the sun and the beauty of the ocean. You can hear the waves crashing as you walk, and just doing that over and over on our days made it just a really enjoyable trip. And then we would tell locals that we walked to certain towns, and they would almost not believe us. And then we would show them our map on our phone, like, no, this is where we walked to, and we could show them our steps, and they were like freaking out, like, well, we cannot believe you walked that far, because but it's for us, it was just so gorgeous, and it was a great way to exercise, and it's just easy as far as like it's not hilly, it's extremely flat, and yeah, it was like 245 one way. So we were spending about 4 or 5 hours walking each day. And then you just walk down one side, and then you just grab lunch in one of these small towns, and then you'd walk it back. And it was a lot of fun. We loved it. And then we transitioned to, we did it, I guess it was like a day trip to Valparaiso, which is just south of Vina del Mar. And it's a port city. It's known for its colorful homes. So if you've ever seen these photos of all these multiple color homes in Chile, that's where it is, in Valparaiso. There's a lot of rolling hills. There's an extremely artistic vibe, 40 hills throughout the city, and like these different elevator type funiculars to show this. And we did a great walking tour there. I'll let Nikki jump into that.
Yeah, so Valparaiso is completely different from Vina del Mar. It's really like a colorful splash of a city. I hope I do it justice, but essentially what you have is a mix of colorful buildings. You have all these rolling hills. You have they're called funiculars, and it's really popular there to have all these elevators, and you can take these elevators from like ground level up through these rolling hills up to a different level. And then you just walk around and you're at like level 2 or level 3, and you just pay a couple hundred pesos to do so. And I don't know. I mean, we took one of these funiculars to do that. It was during one of our walking tours that we did. We did our third walking tour here while we were in Valparaiso. And I think it lends to the history of their city. Like the funicular that we took was in front of this Queen's Castle that used to be. And it was like 100-year-old funicular. And it's literally an elevator that goes at a snail's pace. I mean, there's nothing special about it, but the city is just known for that. The cool thing about
Yeah, sorry. I just want to add something real quick, because we talk about walking tours, but if you were going to explain a walking tour to me a few years ago, I probably wouldn't even know what it is. It's typically a one or two locals that take a group of 25 to 30-ish travelers that are in town. Sometimes they're from that country that are just happen to be in town, want to take advantage of this, or they're travelers from all over the world. We've been on walking tours before where when they go around and say, hey, what country are you from? That there's been 15 to 18 different countries named in a session. So, but that's essentially what it is. It's just a group of tourists looking to see the sights, and they're typically free. They're free walking tours, but you tip in the end. So that's if you get an idea of what these tours are as we're walking around the city, but they're professionals. They're usually very educated locals that a lot of times either have studied history or art of the city, and they love this stuff, and you can feel the passion when they're doing it. But they'll walk you around in the group. As you're walking around, they'll tell you stories or give you highlights of what you're experiencing, and then it's typically 2 to 3 hours long. And then at the very end, they'll say, hope you enjoyed this, blah, blah, blah. And then they'll ask for a tip at that point. Either ask or it's assumed that you tip them at that point. But that's it. I mean, sometimes we assume that everybody knows what a walking tour is. And we didn't used to do these, but now we take advantage of them all the time because it's just an amazing way to see and learn a city quickly.
Yeah, so intermixed amongst all these colorful buildings that you get to choose whatever color you want to paint it is tons of street art. And so the unique thing about Valparaiso is that graffiti is legal in Chile. And so it's considered art under certain circumstances. So if an artist wants to place graffiti on a certain building, all they have to do is ask the owner, and the art must be of what is considered creative nature. If the owner of that building deems whatever artistic piece is going to be placed on their building is creative nature and they okay that, then the artist can go ahead and place that graffiti onto the side of that building. So graffiti essentially is acceptable in Valparaiso under what is considered to be supervision. And so the city actually is promoting artists to express their ideas and their creativity and their views as long as they're contributing in this responsible, creative manner, which is amazing. And, they do fine artists that they don't think that their graffiti is supervised. So, if you're a shop owner and you come out and you have some art on the side of your building that you did not approve, then you actually, as an artist, if they find you, can be fined a very hefty fine and or jail. And so, it's what they do is I think they're trying to promote a creative outlet for these artists to put their artwork up and to not just spray paint some BS on the side of a building. And so as a result of that, when you walk around this city, you see a mix of colorful buildings intermixed with just the most amazing colorful spray paint and art and just splash of color. And it's just like a sensory overload. I mean, I don't know how to describe it, but it's on sides of buildings. It's on stairwells that you will walk up. It's on the ground that you're walking on. It's on the roofs of buildings. It's just everywhere. It's on flower pots. So it's just, you feel like you're walking inside of a rainbow, and it's just really cool because there's never really been a place on earth that I've walked amongst all this just, self-expression and this creative outlet. So it's just a really unique experience. But on our walking tour that we did, we went through this one area in Valparaiso where they showcase all these artists' work. And it was just a really cool experience to hear about it. And we saw the work of this one famous graffiti artist, and his name is Lucas, Lukas. And a lot of his work is showcased after you go up this funicular, and it's on the ground level 2 of this area outside of the Queen Victoria's elevator. And it's just a really cool thing to see. But so yeah, that was what we did after Vina del Mar. And it was just completely different from Vina. The Valparaiso vibe was totally different.
All right. And then we headed south. We actually went down to Argentina, to Ushuaia, which is the most southern point of really, I think, all of the world. It's called the end of the world. It's the closest point to Antarctica you can get in the world. And we spent a few days down there. I guess it's also considered Patagonia area. Spent a few days there. And then we headed back to an area called Puerto Varas in southern Chile, which it's cool. It was it reminded us of being on the lake in Michigan, because it has breathtaking views of this huge lake there. There's green slope, snow-capped mountains that you can see in the distance. And there's a volcano off in the distance as well. But it's a small town. It's like a kind of a small, quiet little town where you can walk from the entire town on foot in about 30 minutes. But it's packed full of great restaurants, viewpoints. It's hilly in some points, and there's a lot of parks to visit. It was nice. It was actually got in the water in the lake one day. It was pretty darn cold, but it was a nice experience. And there's colorful buildings, and it's just it's cute. It's fun. It's got a German architecture feel to it, and there's a lot of outdoor adventures that you can take part in, and there are a lot of day trips as well if that's what you wanted to do to take advantage of it. And then we went north to Antofagasta, the very north of Chile. So Chile is massively long. I think has the longest coastline in the world. I hope I'm not messing it up, but I'm pretty sure it's the longest coastline in the world because it's an extremely long country. So we went from being in the south part of it up to the north part of it, which actually took a 14-hour bus ride, and then a flight, and then another, I think, 3-hour bus ride. And we spent parts of the first part we spent in San Pedro de Atacama, which we'll get to in a second. But I wanted to touch on Antofagasta real quick because it's this, we did a work away there, met some great friends, had a chance to celebrate a World Cup qualifier match with a bunch of locals, and just had a blast in the week there. Went dancing and partying one night with Cynthia, our host, and we had a Chilean barbecue. It was a great cultural experience where we got to learn a lot about the country we've just been spending 4 or 5 weeks weeks in, and then it was just a great vibe to it. And Antofagasta seems to be a growing city because they've got this a copper industry that's growing, and it's gorgeous on the water, and it's super cheap. I remember going to their version of a Walmart and just walking through in shock at how cheap everything is. But it was just a fun week there to meet a lot of people and a lot of great locals. And then to highlight probably absolutely a highlight of our trip there, and also our trip on our journey so far, and one of the highlights of all of our travel, is San Pedro de Atacama, which is in northeast Chile. It's near Bolivia, and it is just gorgeous. I'm going to let Nikki talk about it because she's got so much passion around it. Obviously, I loved it as well, but I want her to kind of describe to you her feelings.
Okay, so I could probably talk to you about this for an hour, but I will spare you. San Pedro de Atacama is one of my favorite places in the world. I definitely want to go back, but it's because the landscape is like nothing I have ever seen before. It's honestly like I was walking on the moon. I've said this before. I don't know how to describe it. I've never walked on the moon, so how could I say that, right? But the only way I can tell you is that it's like you're walking amongst clear lakes that are turquoise blue, that are green, that are white, and then you have volcanoes in the background and mountains in the background, and then you're amongst desert land, and then one day you're hiking through caves that are covered in salt, and then another day you're swimming in hot springs or thermal springs, and then you have geysers that are pumping out, hot steam out of the ground, and then there's salt flats, and it's just literally insane. Like, I have never seen so many different types of things in my life in one place, like in one desert. And it's the world's driest desert. So it's really, really dusty. There's dusty roads. There's dust everywhere. So a lot of times you feel like you have dust in your eye and your hair and your mouth, which is fine. So you just throw a scarf on you and you deal with it. And the weather, so in the mornings and the nights, it's cool and crisp. In the afternoons, it's warm, and you definitely need to layer clothes because you got to keep warm, and then you got to take the warmness off to accommodate for that, the desert climate later on in the afternoon. But I mean, it's just so beautiful and so peaceful. And we spent 4 amazing days there, and I wish I could have spent 4 amazing weeks there because I feel like we didn't do it all. But our first day when we got there, we did stargazing at night, and we had a private tour set up. There was one other person with us. I don't really know how that works out, but so there was 3 of us. It was Matt, I, and this other guy. And this tour was absolutely amazing. So it was on this couple's actual home. It was their land. It was the middle of the desert, and they had a private driver come and pick us up from our hotel, drive us to their home, and they had wine tasting and cheese and crackers and all this food set out, and they had just like a mini bonfire lit in a barrel, and that's all I could really focus on at the time. And then once I past that mini fire in the barrel, I realized holy crap, there are millions of stars in the sky, where I'm at. And I was literally in the middle of the desert, in the middle of nowhere. And it was just such a unique, amazing experience because they had... Well, first of all, let me back up. So stargazing in San Pedro de Atacama is the best stargazing in the entire world because they have the clearest views of the stars on Earth due to just the weather, the atmosphere. The European Southern Observatory actually has 66 antennas located in this desert for that purpose. And so when we got here, what they did is the couple gave us an introductory lesson on astronomy. They basically just pointed out some of the constellations and galaxies with a laser pointer. And then our tour turned into this spectacular tour with they had these high powered, I don't even know what you would call them, telescopes. Yeah, telescopes. They magnified the sky 600 times that it should be. And so you could basically see anything. I mean, we saw closed clusters and Jupiter and its moons and the Milky Way and all these nebulae and galaxies. It was just seriously phenomenal. It's nothing that I've ever seen before. And it's probably a 3-hour thing. So it was just I felt like I was in outer space, like I was in the sky. It was so cool. And then that was our first night. And that was after like a super long day of travel. We did that. And I think it started at 10 p.m. And then we did that for 3 hours and we went home. And then the next day we went to Salar de Atacama, which is the salt flats of the Atacama Desert. And it's essentially like walking on glass. The whole entire ground looks like a sheet of glass. And what it is it's just due to the salt and minerals and clay mixture of the land. But here we saw like flamingos and we learned about their breeding and why their feathers change from gray to pink. It's because they eat shrimp. And I just never even knew that before. I thought flamingos were pink. But it's a really unique landscape that I've never seen before. It was just endless landscape of like, it looked like an entire sheet of glass. So the salt flats were so beautiful. And then one of my most favorites was called Piedras Rojas, which is red rocks. And what it was this crystal clear turquoise water, which was this lagoon, and the Laguna Salar de Talar. And there were red rocks, like as if you were to be at Red Rocks in Colorado, that surrounded this clear water. And it was in the smack dab in the middle of the desert, and the desert surrounding it was all sand. And it was just so surreal because you could just walk on these red rocks or walk up to the very edge of the water. And it was like nothing I'd ever seen before. It was like out of a picture. It almost looked fake. I don't know how to describe it, but so crazy. And then we also went to the Miscanti in Minicase. I think it was Minicase lagoons, but it was like turquoise color lagoons, and they were like almost nestled amongst all these yellow and green blades of grass. And then like off in the distance were these like volcanic snow-capped mountains in the background. So again, like a completely different scenery, but this blue and turquoise colored water that just was like in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the desert. And then another day we did this amazing tour where we woke up super early, and our tour actually started at 4:30 in the morning. And we went to the El Tatio geyser field, and that's actually in Calama, Chile. So it was quite a distance away. I think like maybe like an hour or so away from San Pedro. But so at 4:30 in the morning, you have to get up super early, and it was -1 degree Celsius outside. So we had to dress super warm to do this. And the geyser fields have all these geysers that are on this almost like burnt sienna red ground, and they are just pumping hot steam like out of the earth. But the steam itself is so hot that if you put your hand or body part over it, you'll be burned. Like your skin would be like sloughed off. But the ambient temperature outside is -1. So you're cold. And so it's just really cool to see that, like all this steam being pumped out of the earth. And then the atmosphere outside is just cold. So we did that. And then we went to, directly after that, we drove to the Puritama Hot Springs. And again, outside it was probably around -1 or 0 degrees. And these hot springs, you can get inside. I did not do it, but Matt did. He was bold. Because I actually didn't bring a swimsuit, but Matt was like, I'll just get in my underwear and swim around. And our tour guide was awesome. She's like, I have an extra towel that, you can use. And you get in these waters, and these waters are actually believed to have healing powers for chronic conditions like rheumatoid arthritis, but they have a very high mineral concentration. And you can swim in these waters, and these waters are like 90 degrees Fahrenheit, but the outside temperature again is like 0 degrees. So it's just so cool. And then on our way back to where we were staying in San Pedro, we stopped at this little town, and it was called Pueblo Machuca. And in this town, there was only 12 inhabitants, and they sold empanadas and llama meat and handmade goods like scarves and hats and blankets and like leather purses and things like that. And I think like goat and cow cheese, that's how they survived. But it was just so unique to see a village of 12 people living in the middle of the desert, raising llamas and making handmade crafts, and see this is how these people survive in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, I mean, these guys were balling. I mean, it was crazy because like Nikki said, there's like 12 people in this entire small town, but in the middle of nowhere. But every tour bus that comes through stops there eats all their goods, buys scarves and hats and blankets. So these people are they're loving life. And it's awesome. I ate some llama meat. Yeah, I forgot about llama meat. I had that. Yeah, it's pretty good, I guess.
And then so that was one day. And then the next day we did a tour, which was called Valle de la Luna. So Valley of the Moon. And this day we climbed in salt caves, and the caves themselves they're fairly large, like in the beginning. And the walls are actually covered with edible salt. So some of the people, it's funny, on our tour were like scraping salt off the walls and eating the salt, which I don't know why you would do that, but they did. And then like towards the end of it, like it would be a very narrow passageways that you'd actually have to get down on your hands and knees and crawl through. And then we were actually climbing to the very top of the caves. And then once you get to the top, which is fairly high up, I don't really know how many meters, but it was just breathtaking view of the Valley of the Moon. And then after that, we went to Valle de la Muerte, which is Death Valley. And we climbed this huge sand dune and had this amazing panoramic view overlooking the Salt Range Mountain and Death Valley. And it was super beautiful. And I may have gotten a little too close to the edge, but that's just another story for later. But yeah, it was just so beautiful. And then our very last thing that we did while we were there was a hike.
Yeah, I'll just add to Nikki's getting close to the edge. We only fight on a few times during our trip. When we do, it's usually food and how close Nikki gets to the edge of places when we get there. But I think she's getting close to learning her lessons on that. And that was one of the situations on this one because she actually slipped a little bit and we had a scare, but it took her breath away and it freaked me out. But yeah, that's I think she's starting to learn that. But that you got to be careful there. Especially you got to be careful on all these places because the wind gusts are crazy. And it's not like we're in America. We're so used to everything's a lawsuit and they've got to have barriers up everywhere and you got to have something like to hold on to. And some of these countries, there's nothing. I mean, they're taking a bunch of tourists into a particular area and there's absolutely nothing to hold on to. You're just on your own. You're not signing a waiver or anything. You're basically in nature's hands. And at any point you can't slip off and fall. So it can be very scary.
Okay, moving along. So the last thing we did was a hike, and it was one of the most difficult, I think, that we've done. We hiked up this, it was a volcano, and it is called Cerro Toco, and it is about 5,600 meters in height, which is, to put that in perspective, it's about a little over 18,000 feet in height. And the funny thing about this mountain, or this volcano, I should say, inactive volcano, is that it's considered to be easy, like an easy volcano to hike. Before we did it, Matt had found this hiking guide / climbing professional to help us trek up this volcano. And he had told the guy, like, hey, we are not avid hikers, but, we're in good shape and this is what we like to do. We're physically fit, etc. And he was like, you'll have no problem. Don't worry about it. He's like, we're also traveling long term, so we don't have a lot of equipment. Like, I don't have walking sticks. I don't carry around gloves. Like, essentially all I have is a scarf and a hat and some tennis shoes. And the guy's like, oh, don't even worry about it. Well, when we get there, he's like, do you have hiking boots? Well, no, we don't have hiking boots. And I'm pretty sure you don't have a size 15 for my husband either. So fortunately, his wife wore one size larger than me. So I climbed this volcano in a one size larger than I normally wear a hiking boot, which I'm actually glad that I did. I almost didn't do it because I'm like, who wants to climb a mountain in shoes that are one size too big for you? But thank God I did, because this was a ice and snow covered mountain. It was fierce wind. It was so cold. And the problem with the height of this mountain is that you have to walk at snail's pace, so your body acclimates to the altitude so you don't get altitude sickness. And so when you do that, like, it's just, your body's not used to that. And poor Matt, like, he also gave us gloves because I don't have gloves. So, like, when you do that, it's just awkward. So we were with another couple that was from Argentina, and they Brazil. And they kept slipping and falling, and I felt it was super bad for them. And Matt was making it up this volcano in his Nike shoes, running shoes that have zero tread on them at this point. And I was just so thankful that I chose to wear those hiking boots and that she had lent them to me, because they actually had some traction and some spikes on them. And I was like, oh my God, I can't even imagine making it up this mountain without that. But anyways, it was such a unique experience to be doing that, because I had never done something like that in my life before. And when you get to the top and you feel so accomplished and just realize, like, I'm sure there's very few people who have done this, although they tell you, oh yeah, this is so easy. It's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure, like I'm one of very few tourists who have done this. So it's just a good feeling to know that like your body is healthy enough to do that, and that you're just thankful that you made it to the top safely. And you're also thankful that, people helped you get there. So I do suggest, if you do and you're physically able to do something like that, just to try it once in your lifetime, because it was something that we really enjoyed doing, although it was hard.
Yeah, and that was one of those moments that it makes you feel really good, like a proudful moment. And again, to put it in perspective, over 18,000 feet. And if you don't know how high that is, I think there's only 2 mountaintops in America that are higher than this one. And this wasn't the highest, but that we could have trekked, but it was definitely something that once we got that high, we were like, holy cow. And we came back and we did our research. We're like, that is extremely high. We had no idea what we were getting into, but like Nikki said, we were so happy that we did it afterwards, because you just get this great feeling. And I struggled with the altitude, and I think we took cocoa leaves and we did everything we were supposed to do to make it easier. But I think it hit Nikki a little bit more afterwards. We were both kind of sick and had a headache after the fact, because once you come down, it's different as well. But so much fun. And I'll be honest with you, we didn't mention this, but San Pedro de Atacama was a place that we were not intending to go to when we first went to Chile. It was never on our plans, but so many locals, as we told them our plans for South America, they kept telling us, are you going to go to San Pedro? Are you going to go to San Pedro? And then finally we just said, okay, we got to figure this out. We got to find a way to get there. So we changed our plans a little bit to make sure that we went there. So and I guess another tip in that is, if locals are telling you to go somewhere and other people are giving you suggestions, be open to that. If you have flexible travel like Nikki and I do at this time. And if that's something you can build into your schedule, absolutely do it. But okay, that is our update on Chile. As you can tell, we loved it. It was the start of our journey, and it had many highlights. So if you get a chance to go down there, we highly recommend you do that. All right, Nikki and I love to read books, and we have put together a list of our favorite books. It's over 30 books at this point at passportjoy.com/books. And this list of books we love is also available on a free PDF that you can download, so you can check it out at a different time if you're not on the website or whatnot. So please go there. It's a book, so there's a lot of different, from foundational thought process and mindset, self-talk, to life advice and self-improvement, and then also fun stuff, just entertaining books that we've enjoyed, and travel books, some books that we've read that changed our thought process in travel and how we go about it. So again, passportjoy.com/books, or if you're on the website, just click on the big box on the right-hand side that says books we love, and either go through the list on the website or download that free PDF that I described. And while you're there, if you haven't looked into audible.com yet, you can get 2 free audiobooks with their free trial that you can get there by clicking through the website. I recommend it. It's how I like to consume books, through my headphones while I'm doing long walks or working out. And it's great for your long commutes to work. It's just a fun way to get that content that you'll want. Again, please check out passportjoy.com/books to find all the books that Nikki and I love to read. Boom. That is it. Thank you for listening to the episode. We hope you enjoyed it and got a lot out of it. Obviously, we love Chile and everything that it has to offer. So if you want to find the links to some of the places that we mentioned and some of the tips that we have there, make sure you go to passportjoy.com and look under the podcast link. I list out all the details of the information that we talk about, and it's just an easy way to use the website to find helpful tips for your own journey. You can also follow along with our travel updates in our weekly newsletter that comes out every Thursday. Sign up for that at passportjoy.com. And you also find there the blog posts, travel tips, the tools, our social media links, and everything you might need to connect with us on the website. And if you have any questions, write in at matt@passportjoy.com, and we will answer those in upcoming episodes. All right, we will be back to you next week for a new episode. Until then, safe travels wherever you might be heading next.